Thank you so much for joining us. This is our All In For Advocacy Rally, the kickoff of the 2023 legislative session. Woohoo! We're so excited you're all here. We have some really exciting people to share with you and some legislative requests to share. So let's get started.
Inspire Washington acknowledges that we and our partners statewide are on the homelands of Native peoples who have lived in this region from time immemorial. We pay respect to their elders past and present. We also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands where all of our cultural partners live and work. Currently, there are 42 tribes, 29 of which are federally recognized, that share traditional homelands and waterways in what is now Washington state. Some of these are nations and confederacies that represent multiple tribes and bands, and Inspire Washington recognizes all of them. We express our deepest respect for and gratitude towards these original and current caretakers and culture bearers of the region. As a cultural sector, we acknowledge our responsibility to establish and maintain relationships with these tribes and Native peoples in pursuit and support of tribal sovereignty and the inclusion of their voices in teaching art, heritage, natural science, and providing cultural programming. We pledge that our relationships will consist of mutual trust, respect, and reciprocity. My name is Manny Qualling. I'm Executive Director for Inspire Washington. I welcome you today. I'm broadcasting from my home in the Central Area District of Seattle, and I acknowledge that I am in King County on the ancestral homelands of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish. As we get started, we always have new people that join, and that is something that we're so grateful for. But it also means that you may have some questions. It's always really important to know who is leading advocacy efforts on your behalf. To be very brief, I just want to assure you, I'm like you. I'm a cultural sector person. I'm a teaching theater artist, a director, a teaching artist. I've also been a heritage specialist working at museums, and also a leader that has served at many organizations in Washington, specifically those serving BIPOC communities. And I am thrilled to be telling your stories as we advocate for more resources for the cultural sector. Jessie.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jessie Wasson. I'm the Programs and Operations Manager for Inspire Washington. My background is in theater, specifically stage management and company management, but I also have experience in the heritage sector as the Family Programs Manager at the Jewish Community Center. I am a fourth-generation Washingtonian and so thrilled to be combining my love of Washington State and the arts and culture here at Inspire Washington. Madeline.
Hi, everyone. I'm Madeline Dalton. I'm the Outreach Coordinator at Inspire Washington, which means I work with advocates when it comes time for the legislative session. Outside of my work at Inspire Washington, I'm a professional actor and have performed regionally all around the country.
It's election day, everyone. We chose today specifically for this rally and would like to acknowledge the power that today has to change the course of our lives. We, the people, have the power to steer our own course with our vote and our voice as an advocate. We implore you to ensure your ballot is in by 8 p.m. tonight. With everything we do, it's always important to give a little bit of background about Inspire Washington and what we do. Because we're always meeting new people and we want to welcome them into our work. After a brief overview of Inspire Washington, we will jump right into the legislative session, what it is, how it works, and then we'll give the camera over, so to speak, to our 8 partners who are here to speak and share their legislative requests. Then we'll spend some time talking about your role in all of this and how your advocacy is an essential part of the process and what you can do to ensure science, heritage, and the arts is included in our state budget process. So first things first, here's our mission, and I will give you a few moments to read it over. Founded in 2019 with the merger of Cultural Access Washington and the Washington State Arts Alliance, Inspire Washington is your cultural advocacy organization. We exist to serve every state community, from Spokane to Seattle, from Kennewick to Kitsap, from Wenatchee to Whatcom. We aim to serve all communities by supporting all of you, our cultural partners. You are the ones that inspire Washington. All of us share common values, passions, and beliefs. Your cultural work adds uplifting value to community life, bringing joy, forging human connection, and inspiring tremendous social impact. You are not nice to have. On the contrary, your community needs you right now more than ever. You are essential to reconnecting communities after 2 years of distancing and polarization. Together, we are mighty. Inspire Washington's Advocacy Coalition combines and focuses the energy of thousands of people and organizations that provide science, heritage, and arts activities and experiences to every one of Washington's cities and towns. But what do we do every day and year round? Coalition building. We are connecting galleries on Orcas Island with the Symphony in Vancouver and music venues in downtown Spokane. We're building a big cultural team and coordinating with allies like tourism, education, and economic development, to name a few. Advocacy ensures that someone is sticking up for you, the cultural sector, and representing us within every space where decisions are made and resources distributed. Like with members of Congress when we advocated for pandemic relief and in state government. But what's next? What other resources need to be developed so that your work may thrive? Is it money, laws and policy, or something else? We want to know. We know you crave and rely on community within the industry. We're all holding each other up right now. Our education programs provide networking and professional development opportunities, like the Cultural Congress, our statewide conference. We are hoping to gather again in person next year. And Madeline, our outreach coordinator, is always developing toolkits to make your advocacy and communication work easier. We're committed to representing science, heritage, and arts organizations across Washington state by spending more time listening, showing up in person and virtually, and working in towns and communities across the state. Thank you for welcoming us today. When we say the cultural sector, this is who we mean. We represent 3 buckets of work. The first being science and technology, which includes nature conservancies, fish hatcheries, zoos, aquariums, and science centers. The second bucket is heritage. This includes historical and cultural heritage sites, museums, and the humanities. For example, the Elwell Column Heritage Center in Port Angeles. And finally, the arts, which includes theater, music, hip hop, spoken word, film, visual arts, and community festivals like Pista Sinayan, the largest Filipino festival in Washington. We're so grateful you are all here because together as a coalition, we are stronger.
Hello, everyone. I want to tell you a little story. For the last 2 years, I have primarily worked for all of you in the small confines of this little room, this office here in my home. But after we got to the end of last year's legislative session, the time had come for us to be more. The time had come for us to get out of our homes and to really travel across the state, to visit with you, to spend time with you, to give you a hug, to learn about what you're doing, to see the accomplishments you've made despite the most challenging of circumstances, and to also learn more about what you need, to also share information. Over the course of our Cultural Futures Tour, we visited, Jesse and I and Adriana, our board member, we visited over 30 unique cities and towns in Washington. We interacted face-to-face with over 1,000 people. We drove over 3,000 miles to spend time in community. And my gosh, you were also welcoming, and we had such great experiences. We had conversations. We saw you face to face. You were no longer on screen. We also had great cultural experiences. Jesse and I drove up to Republic, Washington, and we went fossil searching over there at the Rose Interpretive Center. We also went into the North Cascades and traveled over that beautiful highway to visit the Methow Valley. During this time, we strengthened our relationships with you, our partners. We also strengthened our relationships with lawmakers. We talked about our vision and their vision and found common ground. And we also spent a lot of time with our allies, with restaurateurs, with hoteliers. We promoted the Working Washington 5 grant program, and I hope that many of you on this Zoom today will be receiving your money later this month. We also, of course, this came at the end of a long 2 years of advocating for COVID relief through the many different opportunities, such as the Shuttered Venue Operating Grant, the PPP. But most importantly, I think where we found our inspiration is we saw the impact that you were delivering. We saw your programs. We saw how much you cared. We met your community members. We are a growing coalition of organizations and individuals and businesses that inspire Washington communities in every region, through the power of science, heritage, and the arts. And I want to tell you something from our view. We're doing a really good job. We still have a long way to go, no doubt. You need more resources to recover. But our ranks, our coalition is growing. In just the last several months, we have added 3,000 people to our mailing list. We have more people who have stepped up to be regional captains. We're still looking for district leaders, and we will need more people than in this Zoom today to secure the resources in the next legislative session. But I am optimistic for our future. I want to talk to you about the vision. We have listened to so many of you. Your ideas and ambitions are coming together, and a hopeful yet urgent vision for Washington's cultural future is emerging. After 2 years of disruption, extreme hardship, and losses of money, of spaces, of programming, and even our people, our staffs, our sector yearns to pick itself up and to reconnect and strengthen communities with science, heritage, and the arts. We want to move forward. We will move forward. There's no going back to the culture of scarcity, a state of inequity where some communities benefit from programming while others do not. No going back to shrinking public and government support or silos within our work. Instead of arts or housing, heritage or mental health, how about culture embedded in everything, at the heart of civic life? We envision, you envision, 3 areas of change. 1, improving the lives of our cultural workers. We all yearn to say the cultural sector has the best jobs. We want more job security, competitive wages, comprehensive benefits, on-ramps for new workers, and equitable opportunities that diversify our workforce. In Washington, our workers shouldn't be exhausted by the hustle to work in the sector while paying off debt, trying to buy a home, raising a family, and preparing for retirement. What advocacy must we pioneer and as a unified sector to improve the lives of our cultural workers? Where do we find the support to create new jobs? 2, engagement and access. Organizations want relevant programming and staff and audiences to reflect the full diversity of their communities. How do you reach them? What resources do you need to implement these changes, and where do we find those resources? Businesses want full audiences and overflowing exhibit floors. They want to be serving everyone in their community, people of all identities, families of all incomes, and people with different backgrounds and experiences. 3, culture is the solution. We all dream of transforming our communities and world with the power of culture, but often our work is undervalued and the true potential of culture isn't pursued. How do we open the doors of opportunity so that our communities will realize that cultural programming and creative thinking may be optimized to address the issues at hand: homelessness, racism, mental health, education, and other social issues and economic opportunities? We have a lot of work to do, and I know we are tired, but this is a new day. And today, Washingtonians are making decisions, and there's a new crop of leaders that we're going to work with, and we're going to find that pathway for more resources for all of your work.
Washington is divided into 49 distinct geographical districts, and each one elects 1 senator and 2 representatives. The legislative session begins every January, and it's the one time of year when laws are created or amended and state budgets enacted. This is a big session because this year is a biennium. The legislature will create a 2-year budget, so we need to be there to secure the resources we need to stabilize our industry and secure our communities and serve our communities with uplifting programs. The session starts on January 9th, and we have a lot of work to do before then. We will potentially have many new lawmakers tonight to educate about the power of culture and the needs of our industry. We will need to have everyone to support this work by meeting with their lawmakers and impress upon them the importance of our work to the economy, community, and individuals.
We are starting from a great place. I know for many of you that have joined us before for Cultural Futures, but there are some new people here today. You've seen this list before. The last legislative session was historic. It was amazing. Look at all the support that we secured. Policies that are still in motion today that we still have not yet actually seen, the full impact of. So, but I do want to temper this. Last year was also kind of unique. Last year, the last 2 years, the state government has had $4 billion at their disposal from the American Rescue Plan. Much of that has been spent down. Also, you're probably watching the news like me. Everyone in, the news is always filled with stories about revenue losses at the government level, city level, state level. What does that mean? Well, it just means it's going to be more competitive. But we have our foot in the door. We built up some momentum. We've been telling our story with such great passion that it's really resonating with a number of the lawmakers that it will still be present despite, because of the election, that will still be present in Olympia to and be making decisions. So this is still our time. And I can only imagine with great optimism what we will accomplish in the future. And so now, I hope that we've set some really good context for you as we start to share what the legislative requests are from our partners. And let me tell you how this works a little bit. With every objective, legislative objective, there is a proponent. Sometimes that proponent is Inspire Washington, but often that proponent is one of our statewide partners, an organization that is really working to serve the state. Our partners like at ArtsWA and Arts Fund and Washington FilmWorks WhipSmart or OSPI or Arts Ed Washington, Humanities Washington, Washington Museum Association, Washington State Historical Society, Washington Trust for Historic Preservation, and of course our other state partners, Washington Department of Commerce or Washington Tourism Association. That's a lot of people. There's always a proponent for objective, and Inspire Washington plays a very important role of conducting all of you, plugging advocates to opportunities. You are the front lines. And today we're really thrilled to have our great partners here to share with you the objectives that they have spent time since the last legislative session imagining, responding to you, and crafting into these objectives that we will be pushing forward in the legislative session. So I'm really thrilled to introduce our first partner, Karen Hannon with ArtsWA.
Hi there, everybody, and thank you, Manny. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Madeline. Great intro there to the work that you're doing, which is so critical to everybody. And you can see here on the slide what we are going for in terms of requests of the legislature this coming session. And as you know, the session opens in January the 9th. And this is a long session, so we have 104 days to get the work done. But for us, job one is to try and get all of these requests in some form or another, hopefully fully funded, but, that's, who knows, but we're trying to get them into the governor's budget in December as a starting point that the legislature will then wrestle with to build their own budgets. So the first one that you're looking there is engaging and working more closely with our tribal partners around the state through what we're calling a Tribal Cultural Affairs Program. And we built this request in concert and in partnership with many tribal members to try and build a program that we're putting to the budget officers and to the governor that we think will be meaningful and the tribes believe will be meaningful in terms of really supporting and lifting up their culture, their creative economy, their access to the creative economy, which is definitely lower than it should be. So, this is a large request for us that would allow us to put at least 2 or 3 people, we hope, in the agency at ArtsWA in Olympia or wherever, who would be tribal members to help us really put this program together as and if and when it gets funding. So moving on down, we are looking at another sector relief grant program of around $50 million for the biennium. And the numbers you see here, by the way, are for the biennium. So for the next 2 years, starting July 1 of next year. So this will be, it's a request for $50 million that would allow us to help probably many of you if not all of you, on the call today to move from today's reality in terms of recovery, which we're fairly certain is not whole for almost everybody. We're finding in our research, and certainly I know Manny and team have found the same thing, that audiences are not back. People have not been able to rebuild their budgets. But, nevertheless, we have the strongest creative economy and the largest creative economy in the country. So, the point we're making is that we need more support. And the work that all of you do is so critical, not only to the economy, but to the well-being and health and general vibrance of communities, every community across the state. So we can really use your help with this to make this request on behalf of us all. The CRM system is basically a customer relations management system, which we desperately need at the agency. And if and when we get it, and if this has been ranked number 14, by the way, by the state technical groups, number 14 out of hundreds of projects that have been advanced. So we hope that if we get this money, this will allow us basically to serve you better in a more efficient way. We're also looking to amplify our work with arts in education, and some of this is around being able to promote arts in education at the school level, but also promoting the activities of young people to participate and to learn how to enter the creative economy and to be able to become, maybe future employees of all of you or participants in the work that you do. And it will also allow us to collect data that displays much more clearly the state of arts in education around our state, which is vastly inequitable and really inadequate. But we need to be able to back that up with some good data. So that's really what we're looking at there. Preserving the state art collection, we have 5,000 pieces of state art that all of we own. We have to take care of them. And we need a couple more people to help us get things on a sensible schedule of conservation and care. And so we're asking for a couple of FTEs from the budget to do that in a more meaningful way. And then last but not least, funding for creative districts. We have 12 creative districts now around the state. This will allow us to continue a program that allows them to do some small but meaningful capital projects in every district. And I will pause there. I know we're out of time. I'm happy to take questions or I'll respond in the chat. But thanks again for the opportunity.
Thanks, Karen. We do have one question in the chat regarding the TCAP program that I'll point your attention to. But for now, I'd like to turn it over to Michael Greer from Arts Fund.
Hello, everyone. I had a slight emergency this morning and out, so I am coming to you all from my phone and a hotspot. So I'm going to dive in, and if anyone can't hear me, just let me know if I look terrible. I can't even see myself. But my name is Michael Greer. I am the president and CEO at Art Fund, and I'm here to talk to you about building for the arts. Quick visual description: I am a light-skinned black male with no hair, glasses, and a mustache, and wearing a blue polo shirt and a gray sweater. The next slide, please. We all know that the arts and heritage sector, the organizations are community hubs, and the organizations that inhabit those hubs serve as gathering places for peoples and ideas. Next slide. For the Building for the Arts program, this was a program that was created in 1991 by Arts Fund and Boeing that grants nonprofit arts organizations and cultural groups funds for major capital improvements. Last year, we were awarded, the budget was increased from $12 to $18 million, with a total cap on those awards at $2 million. Next slide. And you can see from this slide that the awards are really geographically diverse, and although you do see some concentration around the I-5 corridor, there is more and more representation along the coast and along Eastern Washington. That said, we do need continued promotion of this program around the entire state, particularly within Eastern Washington. Next slide. You can see that the 2023-2025 package is $18 million and includes 32 projects in 14 counties and 17 legislative districts. This is the largest packet yet, and we are asking that Governor Inslee include full funding for the Building for the Arts program in his budget this year. Next slide. So why does this matter? You know, a little bit of preaching to the choir here, but we know that there are economic and social benefits that come with a strong and arts and cultural presence in a community. And these physical spaces are catalysts for those benefits. In regard to the economics, in addition to the economic activity that takes place during the building of these places, the projects are completed, they are driving patrons, students, and other community members to the area where they spend their dollars on food, parking, hotels, and other local businesses. Next slide. Woo, bless you. And socially, we know that things like educational attainment, behavioral health, and other quality of life measures are encouraged by engaging with the arts. And these physical spaces are where people engage. Next slide. So we are asking for the full funding for the 2023-2025 Building for the Arts package as recommended, and we are asking for your support and your voice in making sure that this is included in the governor's budget. And we'll go to the next slide. And for any of you who have worked with Arts Fund on this before, Katie Corella is the person to talk to with any questions or comments. If you have questions about the program or what it means to apply or what it means to be a part of, please reach out to her, and I'll leave this up there for 2 more seconds. And if not, you can reach out to me at Arts Fund and I'll make sure that you're in touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. We're so excited about the large Building for the Arts project this year. And now I'd like to introduce Julie from Humanities Washington to share their funding requests.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see you all, even if it is on Zoom. I'm hoping that we'll all be able to be back together again very soon for an Inspire Washington event or other events in the cultural world. I wanted to give folks just a brief overview of what we are doing with state money currently and what our requests for the coming biennium are. We have 2 primary requests, funding for our Speakers Bureau program and funding for our Primetime Family Reading program. Our Speakers Bureau is our contribution to the creative and intellectual life of Washington State. We offer more than 30 cultural experts and scholars from a range of backgrounds, hailing from a range of communities, who are ready and willing to travel across the state to your cultural organization and really any 501c3, because any 501c3 should incorporate culture into their work, we believe. These are free presentations. We vet the speakers, we pay their own area, and we also make travel scholarships available. So if a speaker is coming from a long distance away, that's not a barrier to nonprofits, particularly in more rural areas. Together, our speakers give hundreds of talks each year, and they can do this in person or online. We've gotten very good at doing that with the pandemic, and quite honestly, we're seeing the audiences aren't still quite ready to come back. So this is a great tool for cultural organizations to continue to connect with their audiences by hosting one of our online speakers. So our ask for this coming year is just over $275,000. We'd like to present 120 of these conversations with state money. We also do some additional fundraising so that this wouldn't be a cap on the number of presentations available, but what we would seek some state funding for. What this amount includes is money for those 120 presentations. It includes an adjustment in speaker compensation. It's been more than a decade since we increased the honoraria for these speakers, and they often spend multiple days getting to their destination, coordinating with hosts, giving the talk, and then coming home. And we don't want anyone to feel like they can't participate in this program because they can't afford to sacrifice the time to do it. It would also include some money for travel scholarships. I mentioned we don't want anyone to not be able to host a speaker because the speaker is too far away. We also would like to do some accessibility enhancements with the program. We get requests for translators, sign language interpreters, and unfortunately even security personnel, because some of our talks are given by people of color. In some areas, they don't feel quite as safe, and we like to make everyone, audiences and speakers alike, feel like they can deliver these talks with confidence. And it also that's what I wanted to say about the accessibility improvements. The other thing that we would like to do, kind of on a related note, is our communities are getting more and more diverse, and at the same time, the rhetoric and the temperature has increased at a lot of public events. And so we would like to do some additional training for speakers and host sites, potentially your organizations, in principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. What can you do to make your environment, your location, your the actual event itself more inclusive and welcoming to a variety of different folks? This would also include some training on how to lower the temperature in tense situations and help to promote productive conversation at a time when emotions are really high. So we would want to do some additional training there. That's basically the summary of our request for our Speakers Bureau. We are also looking to continue with some state funding for our Primetime Family Reading Program that is delivered primarily through libraries. We were able to secure some American Rescue Plan money through the state to help with the pandemic learning loss challenges that all of our schools and communities are facing. And we would like to continue that work and continue to make these available to a wider variety of libraries, because as we're seeing the long tail of the pandemic, as Manny likes to say, it's going to take several years, I think, for our kiddos to recover academically, and we want to continue to be able to provide that support. So maybe I'll stop there. Happy to answer any questions. More details are coming on our primetime reading request. We're still working on how our current appropriation would interface with particularly 2023. So I can certainly send specifics along at a later time once we've sorted that out.
Wonderful. Thank you, Julie. I'm so excited to go and attend some of those Civic Conversation speaker series. It sounds really fun. I'd now like to introduce our next speaker, which is Jennifer with the Washington State Historical Society, to talk about their requests as well as the Heritage Capital Program.
Hello, thank you for having me today. I'm happy to talk about the request that the Historical Society has put into the legislature. Some of this is very nuts and bolts, and I won't spend a lot of time on it, as this is the primary way we fund all kinds of activities. And the nuts and bolts are a security guard. Unfortunately, due to increased criminal activity around the research center, we've had to hire a new security guard. But we have 3 other requests for new staff that will really add capacity to the Historical Society, particularly the increasing our diversity, equity, and inclusion specialist to full-time. This past year, we were able to launch a new grant program focused on supporting DEI activities at local historical societies around the state. And we'd like to increase that position to full-time, not only to support that grant program, but also to serve as the equity officer for the Historical Society so that we can meet the governor's targets in terms of pro-equity, anti-racism agencies. We also would like to hire a grants and sponsorship manager to add to our capacity to bring in grant funding to support all kinds of projects across Washington State, and to add an assistant curator for those folks who are at smaller regional historical or local historical societies around the state. This position would be critical to providing support to you in that it will be focused on developing traveling exhibitions. so that we can revive our traveling exhibition program and bring some really high quality historical scholarly content to back to small communities around Washington in the form of panel and smaller exhibits about state history. I think the most important asks that we have, however, in this legislative session are on the capital budget side. And I just want to focus on two of them. If you can go back to the prior slide, I'd appreciate it, Jesse. That the new Native History Gallery is a major focus for the Historical Society. As some of you may know, we have been updating exhibits in the permanent gallery at the Washington State History Museum here in Tacoma across time. And we have been, the legislature funded the design portion for a redevelopment of our Native History galleries. With this project, we would be taking out the full center section of the Great Hall of Washington History and replacing it with a gallery that is tentatively called the Living Sovereignty Gallery, which will be focused on Native history and sovereignty in Washington State, literally and figuratively centering the history of Native peoples in Washington State history. We've been working with a 10-person Native American Advisory Committee and consulting with all 29 federally recognized tribes and others to develop this exhibit that will be told from a Native perspective, and really focusing in on some of the really important aspects of Washington State history regarding the treaty era, as well as boarding schools and some other very important subjects related to that time period and across time in Washington State history. That's a $3.9 million ask. And then you can go to the next slide now. So the Heritage Capital Projects, of course, is a program that we administer and advocate for at the state level. We are requesting about $10 million in funding for this program, so full funding for the Heritage Capital Projects. You can see the full ranked list here. Folks submitted their applications. They were reviewed by an advisory committee and ranked, and we send that ranked list forward. We request that the full amount be funded so that we can fund some really great projects all over Washington State that are focused not only on museums, on collections. You can see several that are focused on historic vessels like the Shenandoah, the Gig Harbor Peninsula Historical Society, the steamer Virginia 5. There's a great project here in Tacoma that the Tacoma City Association of Colored Women's Clubs is advocating for, with preservation of a historic house, the Nettie Asbury House. Lots of great projects on this list that we really want to see funded so that we can maintain these historic features all over the state. So we appreciate your advocacy on any and all of these activities. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer. We're super excited about all of these amazing projects across the state for Heritage Capital. Next, I would like to introduce Chris Moore from the Washington Trust for Historic Preservation.
Thanks so much, Jesse. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here this afternoon with all of you, and thanks to all of you for your support. I want to reiterate, as all of the other speakers have said, how critical it is to have each and every one of your voices as we work in this upcoming biennium to really, really support and fund our cultural and heritage sector. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I'm the executive director of the Washington Trust for Historic Preservation, and we are a statewide advocacy organization. We do work to preserve places that matter across Washington, and we do that through working with local organizations and local communities that have self-identified those places of cultural and historic significance to them. And we also do it through the support of a number of state programs that are out there as well. So I'll start with actually the bottom bullet point there, because I'm following up from Jennifer Kilmer, and we are certainly, the Heritage Capital Grants Program has been one of those programs that really over time has been a continued source of incredible funding for historic preservation, from large projects two small projects that really impact those rural and local historical societies as well. The Washington Trust is very fortunate to be on that list of 29 recommended projects for the 23-25 biennium. And so we are, of course, fully in support of that $10 million request to continue Heritage Capital Projects program. And we will be part of a Heritage Capital Projects coalition with representatives from all 29 projects that will be working collaboratively this session to see that $10 million come to fruition, the $10 million as authorized by the legislature. So I wanted to start off with that. And then moving up to other capital budget requests. Obviously, in the world of historic preservation, we oftentimes are working with bricks and mortar, right? It is the physical touchstones to our history, that buildings and structures and in some cases landscapes that they represent. And those are capital projects. So there are some great programs in the capital budget that help support that. And I want to point to several from, you see on there, DAP. That's the acronym for the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation. DAP is a state agency. They also serve as the Washington State Historic Preservation Office. Preservation offices across the country are actually mandated to implement federal law in the states in which they're located. So DAP, our State Historic Preservation Office, implements federal law related to project review around historic resources, listing in the National Register of Historic Places, utilization of federal tax incentive programs for rehabilitation of historic resources. Fortunately, our legislature has also seen fit to provide DAP with funding for a set of capital grant programs, which are resource specific and really go a long way to addressing rehabilitation needs. And so I'll highlight them very quickly. The first is the Heritage Barn Grant Program. This program has been around since 2007. It has worked to designate 851 barns across the state as official Washington State Heritage Barns. We have at least one designated Heritage Barn in all 39 counties, which is really, really fantastic. And so since 2007, the agency has actually received 567 applications requesting nearly 14 million in grant funds. Now they've been able to award 156 grants, totaling over 3.6 million in funds. And because it's a matching grant program, the investment in historic barns across the state is actually double that. We want to see this program continue at $1 million for the next biennium. The County Courthouse Grant Program is, as suggested, there to support the rehabilitation of our iconic historic county courthouses. Of our 39 counties, 33 possess historic courthouses. Since 2005, the program has provided nearly 21 million in grant funds. And because it also has a matching element to it, that 21 million has worked to leverage more than 53.5 million in overall capital improvements to historic courthouses. So it leverages just over 2.5 to 1 in terms of a match. And it's really been an incredible boost to our counties to help do the right thing as they look to modernize and preserve their courthouses. So the 4.761 million that you see would fund projects at 10 courthouses across the state. The next is the Historic Cemetery Grant Program. This is a relatively new one, but House Bill 2637 passed in 2016. And since that time, we've had 3 grant rounds. Since that time, 114 grant applications have been received, requesting over 4 million in funds. And that 4 million request is more than triple than we've had available that the agency has had available to distribute in grant funds. But thankfully, overall, DAP has awarded 53 grants, and they do total over 1.2 million. And really, these projects are intended to preserve outstanding examples of the state's heritage, enable historic cemeteries to continue to serve their communities. In many cases, these are active cemeteries, and certainly to honor the military veterans that are buried within these cemeteries as well. So we want to see 515,000 to continue that program. And then lastly, the Historic Theater Grant Program. It was brand new in the 21-23 biennium and so needed because of the impact our local historic theaters faced with the pandemic and having to essentially go dark for the better part of 2 years. But really the effort to preserve historic theaters by the agency has been long going. It was way back in 2008 that an assessment was done that identified over 80 theaters across the state that were historic, built by 1957 or before, and identified over $38 million in physical needs and capital improvements to those theaters. It was just, again, in this last year that we were able to work with the legislature and that the agency had requested funds in the last biennium as well to create the first grant cycle. There were 22 grants, applications that came in requesting nearly $1 million, which again was about triple the amount available. But at the end of the day, 8 grants were awarded, totaling $280,000 to help support historic theaters reopen, make needed improvements to continue to serve their patrons and their communities. And we really want to see that continue. The agency is asking for $515,000, and we support that. So those capital grant programs are key to preservation. And then lastly, the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation also operates the state's Main Street program. This program serves 72 communities throughout the state with a focus on economic development in the downtown core. It utilizes historic preservation and the built environment to create a unique situation, a unique environment for economic development. And really, this program has blossomed since being at the agency. The Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation started managing the program in 2010, and it has grown by 4-fold since that time. So what we're really asking for is a support of the agency's request, which is to increase some operating funding to really manage that program, to really provide the level of services that are needed throughout those 72 communities. And it is an additional $700,000 for the biennium on top of the existing maintenance level funding the agency receives. So we're very supportive of this great work happening across our agencies in the cultural and heritage sector. So thank you very much for the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about these programs, and I will pass it on to the next speaker.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris. These programs are so important and what make Washington life so exciting and fun and historic. So thank you so much for all of your work. Next, I'd like to introduce Brad and Katie from the Washington Museum Association.
All right, I want to thank everyone today for the opportunity to talk about what we have going on for our legislative ask. So my name is Brad Richardson. I'm the Vice President of the Washington Museum Association, and I have Katie Buckingham here, who's our president. And we are keeping it pretty simple. We're new to the legislative asks at this point. And so we really want to focus on what we think is a very important initiative, which is Museums Connect, which was developed and proposed by the Washington Museum Association in 2021 as a key statewide initiative to work with currently established networks to conduct a statewide survey over a 3-year phase of this project that will result in broader connection for museums across the state of Washington. As we watched the COVID pandemic roll across the state, we realized that the recovery has not been equal. And now, obviously, with the forecast for potential difficulty economically, we really want to make sure that museums are broadly connected across the state of Washington. As we looked at the smaller rural museums, museums within urban spaces that are smaller, a lot of them weren't aware of these amazing resources that all of you are discussing today and all of these opportunities. And through Museums Connect, we're going to be able to create that inventory in that first year and a half of the project. And then we're requesting $200,000 from the state legislature for years 2 and 3 of the project to start actually delivering these resources so that WAMA can serve as a grassroots organization, facilitating conversations between the larger state organizations and all these opportunities and the smaller museums that might not be aware of this. And so we received $100,000 in this last budget, and we're able to hire our coordinator, which is already they're already well at work to create this inventory and start connecting with our museums. But we need the years 2 and 3 of funding, the $200,000, to be able to complete the project and start delivering these important resources across the state of Washington. And so It's a pretty simple request. We're trying to be very focused on what we're doing, and we appreciate any support that we can get for this project. So thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Simple, but so needed, especially for all of our smaller museums. Manny and I visited the Ferry County Historical Museum way up in Republic, and it was just such a charming place and so important for history. So thank you so much for your time. Next, I would like to introduce Shannon Halberstadt, who is the Creative Economy Sector Lead from the Department of Commerce, to talk about where cultural tourism and other creative economy things that relate to the commerce.
Thanks, Jessie. Like Jessie said, my name is Shannon Halberstadt. I'm the Creative Economy Sector Lead with the Department of Commerce, and I work in the Office of Economic Development. The Office of Economic Development has several key sectors in Washington State where we invest in creating jobs for Washington State residents and also growing businesses. And the creative economy is the newest key sector in Washington State, which is really wonderful. And it's thanks in a large part to advocacy from folks like you and folks like Inspire Washington. So I'd really like to thank everyone for the work that they do in advocating for the cultural sector. And that in turn helps to build the creative economy in Washington State. Commerce's key role in the budgeting process is really to help to contribute to the governor's budget, contribute ideas to the governor's budget, and also to support the governor's budget. Right now, where we are in the budget creation process is that agencies from around the state, one of the steps in developing the budget is that they create decision packages. It's really great because you can go to the Office of Financial Management and find the current decision packages there. So for policy nerds, if you want to dig in a little bit deeper, you can see a lot of the requests that you like written. So I appreciate that transparency from the state of Washington to our citizens. There are several different things that we're seeing across the state that can really help to benefit the creative economy. And I want to focus first on my last bullet there, and that's housing and creative space for workers. We're seeing the creative economy and creative workers really impacted by the cost of housing and space to be able to create and present and sell their work, as well as places where they can look at affordability for housing. I want to say first that we really appreciate our partnership with ArtsWA and Building for the Arts, and the Department of Commerce has put forward a DP to directly support the Building for the Arts program. And then there are also several other DPs that are out there that we can continue to watch that may be able to increase housing and space affordability and directly impact, I'm sorry, the cat is trying to get in here, directly positively impact creative workers and creative businesses across the state. The second thing that I'd like to jump into is that there is currently a decision package through the Department of Commerce for tourism in general. And there may be opportunities there to also look at cultural tourism. Many of our presenting businesses and nonprofit organizations around the state have experienced a serious audience decline, and being able to tap into our partners in the Washington Tourism Marketing Authority would really be beneficial to cultural organizations and businesses across our state. And secondly, as we're moving across the state, we see a lot of need for business support for creative enterprises. And these are creative enterprises of all sizes, from the largest to the very smallest micro enterprises and individual artists. There are several different decision packages that are out there that expand over all business support. And so our opportunity there is then to translate that into business support that can be specific to the creative economy and in turn to the cultural sector. So with that, I just wanted to thank you again for your advocacy, and let's continue to support our creative workers and creative businesses across the state. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Shannon. We look forward to seeing how these DPs continue to develop throughout the budget session, and as well as the broad session. And now I'd like to pass it back to Manny, who's going to talk about Inspire Washington's legislative request.
Thank you, Jesse, and thank you, partners. Let me give you a little context. If you've not heard, I know many people have, but maybe you haven't. What is the Cultural Access Program? Well, in 2015, the state legislature created legislation which therefore authorized the Cultural Access Program. What the program allows is it grants taxing authorities to cities or counties. Across the state of Washington, any city or county can put forward a cultural tax that will increase base sales tax by 1/10 of 1%. That's about 10 cents for every $100 spent. Of course, the amount of money generated, or the amount of money the taxpayers would contribute to this, really varies by community depending on where people live. Right now, that cultural tax must be authorized by a vote of the people, and that's the only way this tax can be implemented. But since 2015, when the law was created, we've learned a lot about how this works, and also much has changed in Washington State, and we want to address the world that we live in today and improve the law to create more flexibility and create more options. We aim to pursue councilmanic authority for the cultural access law. AIM. We're still evaluating. Today's elections day. We want to see how elections play out and who will be in charge of certain committees. So I'm not, we aim to, but we're really going to decide after elections whether this is a bill that we will pursue. And let me explain to you what councilmanic authority provides. If we were to get introduce a bill and have it approved by the legislature for councilmanic authority, it creates another option for implementing a cultural access program. So now cities, in that case, cities and counties would not have to rely on purely a vote of the people. They could also enact councilmanic authority. The city council or the county council can decide that as elected leaders, they will vote on the program in their chamber. Now, what does this do? Well, it bypassed a long and expensive campaign. There's still plenty of accountability because these leaders, these city or county council members, were elected by the community, and they will, and therefore they've been kind of provided the authority to make these decisions. And also, there will still be a public process, but it will happen not out in the community with ballots and voting, but a public process, probably taking several months in their council chambers. It just kind of, it shifts where the conversation happens. Now, we believe this is a great tool for the toolkit. We introduced this bill 2 years ago. What inspired us back then? Well, at the time, cultural organizations were being shut down. Across Washington State, many cities and communities worried that they were going to lose their cultural organizations because of the sudden and unpredicted, end of admissions and all sorts of earned revenue opportunities. They were shut down. So therefore, it was viewed that if we had councilmanic authority, they can enact a cultural access program and all of a sudden have a new stream of revenue to sustain their cultural organizations. This bill was not successful in the last 2 legislative sessions. We feel that the winds of change are playing. Perhaps there'll be new leadership in the committee and we'll be able to see our bill move. And so therefore, we're going to evaluate that right before this session. Also, Washington's a different place now. We're really thrilled by new programs such as the certified creative districts in Washington. Those communities have had civic processes. They've already had big community discussions about the value of creative and cultural programming. They may be more inclined and more ready to enact councilmanic authority. Again, we just believe it's an important tool for the toolkit. There are many laws and pieces of legislation that Olympia has already approved that have councilmanic authority. In fact, the originating legislation that created cultural access had another piece to the law, which also allowed communities to leverage a 10th, an increase, 0.1% of sales or property tax for housing. And that has councilmanic authority. So we feel it's just fair. If that piece of the bill gets councilmanic authority, cultural access should have it as well. In addition to that, I just really want to say that from our travels, we heard you, Washington. about the concerns and the challenges of space and housing, cultural space for rehearsals and performances, and affordable housing for your staff. If your workers can't find a place to live, how will you find the team to provide your programs? This is a huge issue area, and everyone is focused on it, even our lawmakers, especially the lawmakers, as we've heard from them, who have been knocking on doors and campaigning. We asked one lawmaker, what are your priorities for the next session? And she goes, well, regardless of what committees I serve on, my priorities are housing, housing, and housing, because I've been knocking on doors and campaigning, and I've been hearing from my constituents. With all that in mind, it is such a huge issue area. We can't really wrap our brain around an objective, but we at Inspire Washington will be forming a task force that will be paying attention to every space and housing bill that is dropped by the lawmakers, so that we are paying attention to them. We're evaluating them for, in terms of whether they have a good pathway for success. And when there are hearings and committees, we want to show up so that we add our critical voice and share our, our story through our lens, the cultural sector, about how these things impact us, so that we can be a partner in the solutions, right? So this is another area. It's not necessarily a request. I'm not coming here. I won't be giving you a briefing sheet, but we're putting together a team because we've got to be in a state where it's getting more expensive to live and work, and where we are losing our cultural footprint. We need to be part of every conversation and be an ally in creating that solution. So we will be paying attention to that. Also, we are really aligned with Arts Law around the future funding support. We remain optimistic and hopeful for the governor's budget, and we'll also see what happens after the governor's budget. Frequently, Inspire Washington has had to kind of respond to the governor's budget and figure out what we present in the legislature during the session based off of what is perhaps not supported in the governor's budget. So we're still paying attention to that. And that wraps up what we will be the proponents for at Inspire Washington.
Great, thanks, Manny. All right, so we've just shared a whole bunch of really awesome, amazing, wonderful programs that we hope to happen in these next coming years. But how do they happen? Well, we need you. Your role in the legislative session is absolutely important and vital. The only way these bills and budgets can become real is if lawmakers vote on them. And the only way that they will vote on something is if they know it's important to you. So let's talk about why advocacy is important.
We can't be successful without you. Jesse said it. Advocates are critical. In fact, I believe we were so successful over the last several years because we had more advocates engaged. And we already have 3,000 people who have joined our list, but we still need more. I've always said, ever since took this job 4 years ago, that we will be more successful if we have a better ground game in Olympia. In our representative government, advocates are a critical part of the process. Your lawmakers are elected by the community and accountable to you. They want to hear from you. They want to hear from their voters to know what's important. And trust me, we have spent a lot of time walking the halls of virtual Olympia and real Olympia, and spending a lot of times walking even the halls of Congress or being on Zoom with our congressional partners. Take a meeting with your lawmakers. If you don't take that meeting, trust me, somebody else will. And I'm certain that you have something really compelling and community focused to discuss with them. You are a community insider, a cultural leader that represents, yes, perhaps an area of work in an organization, but you also represent an industry all across Washington. You are the boots on the ground. The legislative session is a journey from January until the end of April, with many twists and turns. And at times, we will need help from very specific local leaders in very specific districts to nudge lawmakers, to respond to their concerns, to share a different point of view, to show up when necessary. You are our front line. Your lawmakers also depend on you. Can you imagine being a representative or a senator within the state of Washington, and every day more bills are dropping and everyone's knocking on your door and your Zoom schedule is filled with everyone asking for things? How do you prioritize all of that? You do. because you work with your community. You start to figure out what really matters to the people that you're serving. And therefore, none of what we have envisioned for the future, for Washington's cultural future, can happen without you working alongside us.
So before the end of the calendar year, there are 3 things that you can do that will make a huge difference prior to the start of the session in January. Number 1, identify who your representatives and senators are and meet with them, like Manny said. For many of you, this may change tonight. So after the elections, determine who your lawmakers are, and then just send them an email and request a meeting. It is their job to meet with their constituents, so don't be intimidated. I'm going to drop a link in the chat right now for you to figure out who your lawmakers are, based on your district, but please take a look at this after the elections because it may change. Number 2, join our advocate platform, which is called the Inspiration League, and then recruit 5 more people to join. I'm going to drop another link in the chat here. This is our advocate arm, our advocate website. This is where you can find so much more information about resources, one-sheets, tips for speaking to your lawmakers, all sorts of information. It's a great place to find stuff. Also, sign up to be a Arts, Heritage, and Science Week advocate or district leaders, and then recruit 5 more people to sign up. And Madeline's going to talk a little bit more about this later on. It will be a super fun event. So the Inspiration League, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, is our online advocate platform. By joining, you can become a local hero for cultural programming in your community. Everyone in the league are just regular folks like you that believe access matters. They are there to champion culture whenever a threat or opportunity arises. This platform enables us to connect advocates to lawmakers. When you join, you register with your address so that you're directly connected to the people that represent you. And back at Inspiration League headquarters, we are always scanning the horizon for threats or opportunities. So when there is an issue that needs attention, we send an eye alert to our Inspiration League. This is an email that is sent directly to your inbox. And in the inbox, there will be a link to click that opens the Inspiration League platform. So on this platform, we will break down the issue, why it matters, and what it means to your community. We always want you to know what you're advocating for and for you to make the decision. We will always be completely transparent. On that same screen, you will be provided with a pre-written letter to your lawmaker that we have written. You have the option to edit it, rewrite it, or send it as is. You are always in control of your own advocacy. But please, please take a few moments to add your own perspective and voice at the top of the letter. This makes a big difference because lawmakers won't read all the letters if they're exactly the same. Then you'll fill out your information, name, address, and then etc. And that email will go directly to your lawmaker. At Inspiration League, advocacy is easy, quick, and secure. With just 2 clicks, you inspire change. When your lawmaker receives your letter, they know that their constituents care. There have been many occasions when we have heard from lawmakers who have expressed what a difference it makes to hear from their community. We can track the amount of letters to lawmakers that are sent through the Inspiration League, and there's a direct correlation between the number of letters and numbers of dollars allocated to our sector. The Inspiration League makes a huge difference, and it is so easy and simple to be part of. Now I'd like to turn it over to Madeline to talk about district teams and leaders.
Everyone. So when we go to do our advocacy during Arts, Heritage, and Science Week, we split our advocates up into a team for every single legislative district. And as Jesse said earlier, there are 49 legislative districts in the state of Washington. Each one of those districts has a district leader, and a district leader schedules meetings with lawmakers as well as attending those meetings. They organize and energize their team with talking points and meeting strategy before they go in and speak to their lawmaker, and they will track and report meeting data to report to me. And we want you to sign up to be a district leader. You will love being a district leader because you get to be a leader in your cultural community, not only for the people that you work with and your peers, but to your lawmakers. They will look to you for guidance as you engage in cultural conversations. Many lawmakers don't have any touch points with culture, and you will become their touch point. You will teach them about what our sector needs, and they'll listen to you. You will also ensure that your district, your region, has a prominent voice in conversations about cultural funding, and you'll inspire other people in your community to come and advocate alongside you. Jesse is going to drop a link in the chat now for you to register to be a district leader. I will say that most of our Seattle districts, especially Central Seattle, have already filled up with district leaders. Thank you to those of you on this call who are going to be district leaders in Seattle. But outside of Seattle, we are really desperately looking for more district leaders. We want to make sure we have really good representation statewide. If you are in Seattle and you're excited about being a district leader, but your district's been claimed, please sign up to be an advocate. We'll talk about that in just 1 second. We also have regional captains this year. Regional captains are going to serve as our communications liaison between us at Inspire Washington and the district leaders and their advocates. And our regional captains are going to really briefly introduce themselves. So we'll start with the East Side region. Putter, are you there?
I am, of course, after all this time, I can't find my mute or my camera. I am Putter Burt, and I am the president and CEO of Kids Quest Children's Museum, and I'm excited to be representing districts 5, 41, 45, and 48. I think we are an incredibly diverse district, and I am excited to be the communication lead and advocate to help us move things forward in Olympia. Thanks, Madeline.
Thanks, Putter. Let's go to Barbara from South King County.
Hi, everybody. Yes, happy to be here. I'm Barbara McMichael with SoCo Culture, and that's a South King County Cultural Coalition. I'm funded by For Culture to serve South King County. So I am kind of overseeing districts 11, 30, 31, 33, and 47. And I'm happy to say that we already have district leaders, captains for the 30th and the 47th districts, but I'm still seeking people who want to kind of take the lead in districts 11, 31, 33. I'll be happy to support you in all sorts of ways, but I'd love to hear from you. I'm putting some contact information for me in the chat, or you can just reach out through Inspire Washington. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Barbara. Let's move on to Snohomish County.
Hi, I'm Kate McKenzie. I'm a co-captain with Carrie Johnson. I'll let her introduce next. We are on the Snohomish County Arts Commission, and I'm super excited to be co-captains this year. We don't have any advocates or district leaders, I believe, for any of our districts, so we need anybody we can. Districts 1, 21, 32, 38, and 44. Carrie, you want to introduce yourself too?
Hi, I'm Carrie Johnson, Snohomish County Arts Commission member.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kate and Carrie. And yes, Snohomish County, come on out and join our advocacy. Northwest region, Kelly. Is Kelly still on the call? Is she here? If not, I'll just name her.
No, it looks like she jumped off.
Oh, okay. Kelly Hart from the Allied Arts of Whatcom County is our regional captain for the Northwest region. So that is districts 10, 39, 40, and 42. So Bellingham, Mount Vernon, the San Juan Islands, and parts of Skagit County like La Conner and Stanwood. Let's move on to the peninsula. Katie.
Hi, everybody. I am Katie Goodman. I'm out here on the Olympic Peninsula representing districts 23, 24, and 26. I am the Senior Director of Development at Centrum, which is celebrating 50 years of bringing art and music and culture to the Olympic Peninsula in 2023. And I'm really excited to be a part of this process to bring more funds and more resources to the creative economy and the cultural sector in Washington. I don't know about y'all, but that's where I want a lot of my tax dollars going. So I'm glad to be part of this amazing team that's making that happen. So we need district leaders in all 3 of those districts and also advocates. So if you're on the Olympic Peninsula, please reach out to Inspire Washington so we can get connected. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Katie. Let's move on to Eastern Washington.
Hi there, my name is Meg Kapler. I am going to be the regional captain for the Central and Eastern Washington area. I think I'm in the right one. Is that right, Madeline, or is it someone else?
Yeah, I was actually calling up Spokane, but yes, Central and Northeast. We'll go with you. We'll
Okay,
go to Spokane
sorry,
next.
I jumped in.
All good, no worries.
My name is Meg Kapler. I am the executive director for North Central Washington Arts Alliance, and I also work for in Wenatchee for Community Health Center. And I just wanted to share that one of my I'm so excited for this opportunity to be a regional leader and really to, as Manny had mentioned earlier, advocate for the crosswalks between mental health advocacy and the arts and heritage and science. There's so many opportunities there for that. So I'm really excited for that. So please, if you're interested and you're in my area, also contact Inspire WA and we'll get you signed up as an advocate. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Meg. And Melissa or Audrey, do we have our Spokane folks on the call still?
Yeah, I'll start. Melissa Huggins, Spokane Arts. I'm serving as a co-captain with Audrey Overstreet. I'll let her introduce herself. I think we do have district leaders for 3, 4, and 6, but we need plenty of advocates. So I will turn it over to Audrey so she can introduce herself.
Hi, my name's Audrey Overstreet, and yes, I am a Spokane Arts Commissioner working with Melissa Huggins, who is our Spokane Arts Executive Director. And yeah, I'm excited to dig in and get going on this. Thank you all for having this. It seems like you have a lot of great resources that I'm going to need to tap into. So looking forward to it. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. We have a couple other captains who couldn't be here today. We have Adriana Wright from Seattle Theater Group representing Seattle region. And we also have Matthew Melendez from Great Bend Music representing Thurston County. And we have a couple regions that still don't have regional captains. So if you think that you've got a lot of time set aside and you are interested in representing the Southwest region like Vancouver and Aberdeen, South Central, Yakima, Tri-Cities, and Walla Walla, please reach out to me. We're going to move on and talk about Arts, Heritage, and Science Week really quickly. This is the week when cultural advocates meet with their lawmakers to speak about the issues facing the cultural sector. This year, we are hoping for a hybrid format, in person and virtual. We'll have more information on exactly how that will work later. The meetings that you take with your lawmakers are only 15 minutes long, and you have 2 representatives and 1 senator. Ideally, all 3 of those lawmakers will get back to you and schedule a meeting, and you'll be meeting with 3 different lawmakers along with your team. And our regional captains and our district leaders will help to coordinate all of that. Being an advocate is really fun. It's also pretty easy. We help you by giving you briefing sheets and talking points and really preparing you on how to speak to a lawmaker. So it's a low stress, fun way to get involved in your community and meet the people who represent you in government. If you're interested in being an Arts, Heritage, and Science Week advocate, please follow that link that Jessie dropped in the chat to sign up, and we will reach out to you later on before the session begins in January.
Awesome. Thanks, Madeline. So once the session begins in January, there will be even more opportunities for advocacy. Number 1, respond to those iAlerts on Inspiration League. Number 2, attend Arts, Heritage, and Science Week, either virtually or in person in February. You can meet with your lawmakers. We will be this is just the beginning. We will be having another virtual rally before the session starts, as well as one in the midst of the session to let you know what's been going on and give updates and things like that. So attend our future virtual rallies. You can also endorse or testify for a bill. It's super simple. You can do this virtually. Follow our updates from Inspire Washington to stay engaged, be aware of what's going on, and of course, always share and boost to your networks. The more folks we have involved and know what's going on, the better we're going to do as a coalition. And in case you need even more incentive, we are doing an advocate competition this session. The person who is the most active advocate between now and the end of session in each of our regions will receive a special prize put together by Inspire Washington. We will be keeping track of who does the most iAlerts, meetings with lawmakers, testimonies, etc. We'll announce the winners in May.
Inspire Washington is fueled by the investments of our cultural partners. Of course, we will support all cultural work in Washington State, but we really rely on the organizations and the individuals that step up and provide dues to really pay for all of the tremendous expenses of doing this work on behalf of our industry. So if you have not joined Inspire Washington, I urge you to please consider. Our dues are really affordable. In fact, the vast majority of cultural organizations in Washington state would probably pay $100 or less. But every $100 adds up and provides us the funds that we need to pay staff, to pay for our Inspiration League platform, to pay for our travels, so that we are more accountable to every community across Washington, and also to pay for the tremendous expense of lobbying in Olympia when there are other industries that also lobby as well. We've got to remain present. So again, please consider joining Inspire Washington. You can learn more by visiting inspirewashington.org and clicking on the join button. Well, thank you so much for spending this time with us. I got to tell you, it has been an honor just to see the growth and the evolution of Inspire Washington over these 4 very full years. And I'm just proud of all of us as an industry, as a coalition of advocates. I mean, we now, every year, our ground game gets better. We have regional captains, thank you. We have more advocates engaged than ever before, thank you. But we can still be more. So what's next? Today we started a conversation, and we're going to keep having this conversation, and we want you to share this conversation. So share these great cultural objectives with people in your community, get them talking about it. Let's build some excitement and momentum, really promote being an advocate to your network, talk to your staff, talk to your board, talk to your communities. We recorded today's rally, so this is something that you can share. Get your staff and your board and your supporters and audience engaged. Get the legislative session on their radar. Encourage them to join the Inspiration League and convey to them the importance of showing up and participating, responding to those alerts. Yes, today we talked about a lot of objectives, but I want to remind you that at the heart of it, advocacy is personal. There are lots of things to discuss here and a lot of things you can pursue, but find the things that are most meaningful to you, to your community, and lean into those. There'll be a lot of advocates doing the work, and I really believe that the way this works out is there'll be enough voices for every objective if we just get enough people engaged. Yes, there will be more information in the future. You may remember last year during the session, we did webinars. That will be a deeper dive. Today, you saw a lot of bullet points, but what we're really excited in the next conversation is to really tease out the beauty and the magic of all these different things so that you can learn about how beautiful the county courthouse is in the city of Pasco and why that beautiful historic feature needs support. And you can also learn about the tremendous public art collection. I was recently in Yakima and I saw with my own eyes the repair work that was done on the beautiful Circle of Light on the Yakima Sun Dome. These are just a few examples of how these great objectives will really support our cultural future and bring the vibrancy of cultural programming to every Washington city and town. So we're just getting started, and we're really thrilled and honored to be doing this work with you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We have about 5 minutes left, and we'd love to just take the time to answer any questions that you may have, or comments, or suggestions, or thoughts, or feelings, or anything, really. Everyone's voting today, yes? Or has voted already? Awesome, good. We'll just leave this open. Feel free to jump in and unmute yourself if you'd like to ask a question or share a thought. Otherwise, feel free to jump off and have a wonderful day.